Okay, well, it's 10:31, so we're going to go ahead and start the presentations. Welcome to the Donors Forum this morning. We have three organizations that will be presenting to you about their fundraising needs. And the first one is Bridge Street Mission. Secondly, Stable Hands Equine Therapy Center. And finally, the Marshfield Clinic Health System Foundation will be speaking. So each of these three organizations are going to split our time. And we're going to start off with Craig Vincent from the Bridge Street Mission, who's going to talk about the Pied Piper Plaza relocation and expansion project. And so we look forward to hearing your presentation, Craig, and welcome to the Community Foundation's Donor Forum. It's all yours.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate very much the opportunity to do this. We are pretty excited. We actually just closed on Friday on the building. So we've actually have acquired the Pied Piper Plaza. And so we are going to use that in our ministry. And so this presentation is to kind of help you understand the why and the how, I guess you would say. So we can jump to the first slide, Kelly, if you'd be willing to do that. So first of all, if you're not familiar with Bridge Street Mission, just answer a couple really quick questions here for you. But that we exist because we believe that by demonstrating love, we can open the door of hope and transformation for even the most wounded person. And so we want to be in relationship with people who are hurting. And so that's really ties really into our founding. The way we were founded, it was really a family, mom, dad, 7 kids at that time. And they just started to doing grill outs at the gazebo under the Scott Street Bridge, and just built relationships with people. And that is how our ministry founded, all just volunteers. And as they fed more people, they started inviting other friends and things like that to come along. And our ministry started. And that's it's amazing because then over time, well, we need to feed people inside. So we have our outreach center that does that. And eventually our friends all live outside. What can we do for them? And now we have this sober living for men as well. And so just to sum up what we do, basically, what we want to do, and we're working hard to do, is that we want to meet people in crisis, whether that's because of housing situations, whether that's because of addiction, whether that's because of hunger. We're intentional about meeting people at a point of crisis. And then we're not just content to help them eat or be safe. We want to move them toward success. And as a faith-based ministry, we do that through the power of the gospel. So that's a quickie on Bridge Street Mission. We can jump to the next slide. So currently what's happening is that we have our outreach center, and that is the location where we do a really nice sit-down noon meal for anybody who's experiencing hunger in our community. And really our founder's vision there was to have a place and serve people in a place that both a business person and a homeless person could be comfortable in the same place. And so it's not just a soup kitchen. We're trying to really do a nice sit-down meal for people all around the context of relationships. And so that's our outreach center. Now, in addition to that noon meal, we've expanded those hours from 10 to 3 so that people in the unhoused community have a place to be during the day. So you could call it a day center, a daytime drop-in center. And actually, when we get into severe weather conditions, we then expand even those hours to match with when the warming shelter is not open, so that people have somewhere to be during the day. And then we also do shelters right now, just currently for men. These are program shelters 24/7. So when our men are with us, they're not hanging out in the streets. They're in productive programming every day. and then throughout that day. And so we've got that right now broken up in 3 categories. There's a initial stabilization phase where we just get them off the street and into a safe place and help them decide if our program is a good fit for them. And then we have a recovery phase that we often call transformational, and that has a very significant curriculum, almost like being in college, and we pretty much run their schedules. And then when they re-enter the workforce, they go into a re-entry phase where they are still with us, so they have support and accountability, but now they're getting connected back in the community with employment and a support group like church and so forth. So that's what we're currently doing. Next slide. As you probably realize, is that there is still need in our community. At our outreach center, we ask a simple question when people coming in. We ask them, what brought you here, and are you in housing crisis? And if you are in housing crisis, where did you sleep last night? And believe it or not, in 2022, and we're tracking very similarly for 2023, but we identified 418 different people that told us they were in housing crisis. Now, that doesn't just mean they were living on the street. That might have been they were in a car, staying on somebody's couch, moving from couch to couch, being in one of the shelters, or possibly under the bridge or on the street. And that was 418 different people that told us that. And 107 of them were women, so about 25%. But we've seen in 2023 that percentage of those women who's reported to us that are in housing crisis in 2022, it was 25%. But this year, we're seeing 30% of the people reporting to us being women. I think if we know that the homeless issue does negatively impact downtown, from people hanging around and very visible at times. And we know that's a challenge for some of the businesses. And then just a couple other stats here that we have, and you get more stats from the United Way as far as their community impacts and needs assessments that they do. But 23% are not receiving their mental health care. And the police reported that there were 90 overdoses in Wausau, and 23 of those were fatal in those 3 years that you see indicated there. And so we know that addiction is a major issue that our community is struggling with. And then unfortunately, right now, there isn't a residential recovery and reentry solution for women. There are some great ministries in town that are doing some work for those who are struggling with domestic violence, for moms with kids. But there really isn't anyone who's focused on these more chronically homeless people who've already lost their kids and they're out on the street, and you see them wandering around downtown and so forth. And so that is a problem that we're facing. We can jump to the next slide. So we're hopefully going to be able to be part of that solution. And so we has, as I mentioned, acquired the Pied Piper Plaza, which is a 35 square foot facility. And that campus, as we develop it, is going to be able to offer us, first of all, improved recovery and reentry services for men. There was a group in there called the Northlands Group. And so and it's been vacant for a year though, but before that, there was an area that the owners had built out to be a reentry place for young men coming out of prison. And so that's been vacant. And we're going to be able to move our existing sober living program into that space. And that space was designed for exactly what we'll be doing. So it's going to be it's going to allow us to improve our programming, more modern facilities, going to help us communicate to our clients that they're people of value and worth by how we house them. And so that's going to allow us to do that. But also, as we then get into the renovations, we're going to be able to expand our daytime drop-in and our feeding center, the outreach center. We'll actually be able to double the size of people that we serve in that location. And then finally, and probably most excitingly, as you saw from the need statement, that we'll be able to develop a wing of this similarly to how the other wing for men have been developed. And we'll be able to add that recovery, that much needed recovery and reentry services for women. So we're really excited about that. It's a big step for us as an organization, but we want to really meet the community need, and we're looking forward to the community helping us with that. So we can go to the next slide. So here's kind of our costs, hard costs, which is brick and mortar type stuff, getting the building and then doing the renovations. And then soft costs, things like architects and capital campaigns and all those kinds of things. And then we did put some funds there for escalation and contingency. And then we also understand that this is going to drastically increase the size and scope of our current organization. And so we are putting in the campaign some increased operating costs as well. We can jump to the next slide. As far as the timeline, and this is totally all flexible because a lot will depend on how things move forward as far as fundraising, the current tenants are in the building and they're exiting and different things like that. But we've already purchased the property that happened this month, and we're working on those renderings, and we'll do some renovation to the men's wing. That's mostly going to be involved putting an elevator in so that we can get people who maybe need assistance up to that housing wing. And then we'll build out our outreach center, and then we'll, as a final phase, we'll put together the women's wing so that we can open that as well. So next slide. So how you can help. Again, I mentioned this is a major project for us as an organization, and so we are looking for people to give some capital support to that, where we make a leadership or a major gift or pledge, and we're looking at like a 3-year pledge fulfillment phase on that. We are going to have some naming and sponsorship opportunities available if there's someone that you want to, honor or in that regard. And then because we are working with Community Foundation, we're very thankful, Tim, for the ideas that you gave us to do this, to have a fund within the foundation so that we can accept those gifts of stock, et cetera, things like that. And then obviously we need to offset some of our operating, because that's going to expand. So we're hoping that people will stay generous both to this campaign and to our operating fund as well. And so all the things that you can do creatively, like charitable lead trusts, bequest, reminder trust, all those things that you're probably more familiar than I am with on ways that you can be generous. We're open and willing and able to do really all those things. So on the right there, you kind of see the gift chart, and we're really hoping to really work through those leadership gifts here in the next few months, so we know what people are able to do. And then when we go a little more public with the campaign to the broader general public, we'll be filling in some of the other gaps as well. So I think that was my last slide. Yes, so we get to questions. So I will open it up, give it back to you, Tim, and I'll certainly answer as many questions as I possibly can.
Yeah, does anybody on the call have a question you would like to ask? Maybe as you get warmed up, I'll ask one. So, Craig, you have purchased the new building.
Yes.
And can you give a little bit more detail on, say, what's going to happen to the old building? And then what if you raise 80% of your goal? Do you have a plan that will still make the new building viable?
Okay, really good questions. So first of all, yeah, we have acquired the building, and our plan is to take all our operations into that building. So our other two buildings date back to the 40s and the 50s. And so we have actually sold one of those properties and are leasing it back. And we have a purchase agreement on the other building, and that will be closing at the end of January. So those buildings will have been, God willing, closed and sold. And so we'll be moving 100% into the the newer building. So we do have this phased, as you can kind of see there, that our first phase is to get the men in and do some of those renovations. And then the second phase is kind of really the outreach center. And then the third phase is the women. So we would be moving in that direction. And we're pretty confident because we did a feasibility study with a third party that's helped rescue missions around the country with their campaigns. And so he was pretty confident that that there was enough support in the community to do that. So we think we will. But if we only get to 80%, we would be probably delaying the the opening of the women's side, which is the most needed.
I see that Jean unmuted. So Jean, it's your turn to ask a question.
I do. Craig, thank you, Tim. Craig, thank you very much for your presentation. I have two questions. One, could you please restate the location of your facility?
Oh, yes. Okay.
And then the second question is, could you, from a sustainability standpoint, for this work, what community partners are your key sources of referrals, and who do you work with that provides that supporting network for all of you to accomplish this goal?
Excellent. Good questions, Jean. Thank you. So first of all, I sometimes I get so conscious of my time and not going over it that I went through. The Pied Piper Plaza is located at 325 North First Avenue.
Oh.
And so that is on the west side of the river here, and it's between Stewart and Bridge. So it's in walking distance from our old location, but at least a number of blocks closer to where most of the need is. And if you're not familiar with that, if you're familiar with the old Bethesda thrift shop that now goes under the name Abelite, that is the location of that building. So it was the former shoe factory. Just an incredible structure, solid. And the area that's already been finished for the Northlands group is just incredible what they did with that space. And then we'll be able to jump in and use that. It was done in 2014. So we're improving by 68 years. And then the women's side that we'll build out will be, again, obviously the newer as well. And so looking at that space on its own, you're like, wow, could we really make this work? But when you look what they did on the other side, it kind of gives us a vision and a plan for how we can use that side. And then your other question, our support is mostly coming from the community, where we don't tap really into government resources as a faith-based ministry. And we've been just blown away with how generous the community has been, both the faith-based community, but then also the other philanthropic community in town that have grown to support us. So just a little bit of context, I'm closing in on just finishing 3 years here. And when I came, our budget's grown from $275 to almost $675,000 a year. That's still a small organization, but it's been through just a lot of individuals, businesses, churches. Some of the larger funders in the community have taken some interest in us because of our focus is on not just meeting the need, but moving people out of need. And so because of that, there's been a lot of interest. So yeah, so we are supported not by like a government program, but through individuals, businesses, and organizations, churches, and things like that. So that has been growing, and we've been fairly aggressive trying to do donor acquisitions, which means there are mailings to people who may not be aware of us to get them engaged, and then doing a pretty good job at keeping the people engaged once they learn about us. And so it's going to be more of a grassroots, lots of people kicking in as opposed to one or two major funders. I hope that answers your question, Jean. There's a lot of hopefulness in that. But there's also a track record with rescue missions in other communities of being able to do it. And then we quickly in 2 years went from 25 donors to 700 donors. And so obviously we can't maintain that growth ratio, but if we keep growing on that trajectory, we feel very confident that we'll be able to continue operations.
Great.
Thank you. Thanks, Craig.
Thank you for the question, Jean. Craig, there are a couple other questions that came in chat, but we need to move to the next presenter. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put those in the chat to everybody, so you'll see those and you can answer them for us. I wanted to point out to the presenters also, we're recording this, so you may not see a whole lot of names on the screen, but donors do look at these recordings afterwards. Sometimes they don't want to be visible, if they're an anonymous donor. So this recording will be shared and other people will be seeing it. So I just wanted to make that note to you so you're aware of that. We're ready now for our second presenter. So Mary Ziglifa from Stable Hands Equine Therapy Center is going to talk to us about the Under One Roof Capital Campaign. Mary?
Well, good morning, and I want to thank the Community Foundation very much for this opportunity. I also want to thank the entire audience for being here. And although we are virtual, all of you are virtuous in your service to the not-for-profits in our community. So thank you. And finally, good luck to the Bridge Street Mission. That was a very compelling presentation, and I thank you. We are celebrating, Stable Hands is celebrating 30 years of service to this community. And we started with the Community Foundation's help with borrowed barns and donated horses, and operated one evening a week for 18 weeks out of the year. And that was our beginning 30 years ago. We now operate several days out of the week, and we go 40 weeks out of the year. And so there is a great deal of growth and development that has taken place over that time. We are celebrating this 30th year with those expanded programs and some that are very new, and with our new stall barn Under One Roof project. First, I want to tell you a little bit more about equine assisted therapy. You can see some of the things that characterize equine assisted therapy. I think of all of these things, the fact that it addresses challenges away from traditional and institutional therapies is part of what makes it so attractive. We offer a number of different ways in which people can address some of the challenges that they are facing. We are partnered with the Professional Association of Therapeutic Horsemanship International, which is an international organization setting guidelines and certifications for the training of our staff and for our facility. We are also partnered with the Equine Assisted Guidance and Learning Association, and that is a certifying body nationally known for the psychotherapy and psychological equine assisted therapies. There is a great deal of science involved in equine assisted therapies. One part of that is that the muscles of a horse, the back of a horse, can imprint on the leg muscles of a human who is riding it. And so therapeutic riding for the disabled can promote both balance and erect posture, where that wasn't possible before. We had a child that had been in a wheelchair for a very long time and had begun to curl forward with her face up. And we got to the point where she was so fond of being on a horse that she was sitting up straight and holding her chin down. So these things can work slowly or quickly. One of the cases of quickly is a silent autistic who was on his horse, always enjoyed coming, but silent. And he was on his horse, and I had the privilege of being there when he yells out, "Walk, sassy," and gave his horse a command. Not a dry eye in the house, let me tell you. And the parents were like over the moon. So that's one piece of the science. The other part of the science has to do with stress and trauma, and that is particularly helpful with veterans and first responders. That has to do with the fact that the heart of a horse is larger and the lungs of a horse are larger. And so they beat, the heartbeat is slower and the breathing is more rhythmic and not at all frantic. And so the horse expresses this to a client, and we had a veteran come and just a tour, no pressure, walked up to a fence. The horse walked over to the fence, put his head on the veteran's shoulder. And the veteran turned to our staff member and said, "It's the first moment of peace I have had in a very long time." So that's also part of the science. And that brings us to the next slide. The life report of Marathon County tells us that stress is a major part of our community in terms of need. So the young people in middle school have reported an increase in depression, isolation, absence of adult role models, and thoughts of suicide. And these are children. But veterans and first responders are dealing with stressors that cripple them as well. So equine assisted therapies can be extraordinarily helpful in bringing these people some quiet. We had a veteran who came to just see if he could help out at that barn. And he's been there 9 years as a volunteer and loves the horses, and it's a real attachment. Stable Hands offers programs for children that include therapeutic riding, but also from the ground up. It's teaching them to manage a horse, to care for a horse, to be responsible for a horse. We also have programs where the children are teaching the horses to read and do math. We have 2 programs for veterans and first responders, the Veteran Assisted Sports Training Program. And that is unmounted, and it's just building the horse-human bond. And then we have At Liberty, which is psychotherapy, equine assisted for veterans and first responders. So Stable Hands has stepped up to some of our community needs. With decades of experience, we also work with 9 different social service agencies who make referrals and support their clients through our programs. We have staff and volunteers who are certified and trained in the areas in which they teach and facilitate. So Stable Hands is well positioned to participate in the helping community of the area. What we need to reposition is the stall barn. It's the current stall barn was built in 1900, and it is beginning to crumble. And so the benefits of the therapeutic riding are harder to see when there is this barrier, shall we say. So going to the next slide. Our big dream, there's 3 phases of the big dream for Stable Hands, and we seem to have lost it, but at any rate, the first was the indoor riding arena, and the indoor riding arena is state of the art. It is enclosed, it is insulated, it is well lit, and it is heated. So that's part of why we could expand our effort to be going into the into a stall barn arrangement, and we can extend our training year. After that, oh, there we are. This is the big dream. So phase 1 on the left is the arena, and that is completed. Phase 2 is on your right, and that is the stall barn. And phase 3 is a dream, a twinkle in God's eye, if you will, and that would make it a community center, activities and community center. But the stall barn is our current effort. And we're doing that for our 30th year, but also because the barn we currently have is starting to crumble, and it is located down a sharp incline from the arena. So part of our limitation is safely getting horses up that incline and uneven terrain and in inclement weather in a safe way for everyone involved. So the new stall barn will be extremely helpful in bringing all of the resources of Stable Hands programming under one roof. And it will include stalls and paddocks for our herd, and our herd is 18 to 20. And then the other part of that will be storage for hay, storage for feed, storage for tack and equipment for our programs. There will be some office space, and very importantly, there will be 2 accessible restrooms. Currently, our only single restroom is in a separate building, and clients have to stop an activity, be escorted to the other building, be escorted back, and restart their activity. And that's a real break in efficiency and consistency. So the new stall barn will make all of that so much better and so much more possible. There's some renderings of the outline to give you an idea of the size of the new stall barn. It will meet the demands for year-round consistency of all of our activities and therapies. it will be safe. Most important, it will be safe and it will be versatile. So we are looking forward to having that in place. Your support, next. We seem to have lost it. There it is. Okay, your support will advance our mission to enhance the quality of life of individuals through equine-assisted activities and therapies. We hold close to that mission in everything we do. Your support will promote the health, safety, comfort of clients, staff, volunteers, and our equine partners, the herd. It'll expand program offerings and increase client progress and expand our operating year. And it will help serve the growing needs of this community, which we have strived to do over all 30 of our years. I want to thank you for listening, and I hope to see you out at the farm sometime soon. Thank you so much. I'm open to questions.
Thanks, Mary. Do we have questions? Jean's raising her hand. Go ahead, Jean.
If I may, Mary, thank you. Excellent presentation. The stall barn, could you frame for me, where do you board horses? That is a revenue stream for operating expenses, correct? And is that located in the stall barn itself or elsewhere? I am not clear.
The current barn will be where our boarders will board their horses. It
Okay,
is attached to paddocks and fields, and there are 6 stalls that are secure and elemental, and they can stay there. The stall barn that we are building is exclusively for stable hands, and the stall doors will have access windows and so forth, so that it's easily accessible for our clients.
thank you. And I loved your Veterans Day story too. That's very heartwarming. Thanks, Mary.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have other questions? Okay. Thank you very much, Mary. There's a great presentation, just like Craig's was. So let's go to our third presenter today. We have Marie Stewart and Ricky Harry. They're with the Marshfield Clinic Health System Foundation, and they're going to talk to us about the neonatal unit at Marshfield Children's Hospital.
Excellent. Well, thanks everyone for letting us talk about our exciting project that we're working on at Marshfield Clinic. Can you all hear me okay? I've been having some microphone issues with my webcam. Okay, cool. If something goes funny, let me know. But so my name is Ricky Harry. I'm the Director of Philanthropic Programs for the Marshfield Clinic Health System Foundation. Marie can introduce herself when I turn the presentation over to her. But we are in a very exciting time for our health system foundation. And we are in the process of fundraising to build a new NICU, neonatal intensive care unit at Marshfield Children's. Marshfield Children's is one of only 4 children's hospitals in the state. And so while certainly other health systems are providing pediatric care throughout our state and in this area, what we offer is incredibly special. We have a lot more specialties under one roof, a lot more capabilities than most health systems and than any other health system in central Wisconsin. We're a level 3 NICU. So the way that the levels work for NICUs, a 1 is basically a general nursery. When a baby's born, when you think of kind of a nursery in a hospital, that's what you would think of typically. And then we go up in acuity from there. So our level 3 NICU can do everything that a level 4 NICU can do, except for 2 services, ECMO and heart surgeries. But there are only 2 children's hospitals in the state that have a level 4 and have those capabilities. We can do everything else. So that's partly because we have so many pediatric specialists under one roof at Marshfield Children's. Those specialists include other heart and cardiovascular services other than actual surgeries, dermatology, endocrinology, medical genetics, neurology, a lot of different things. We also offer surgical capabilities for our NICU babies, again, outside of the heart surgeries, but we're able to do so much under one roof and serve families here so that they don't need to travel nearly so far to get the care that their child needs. Our on-call transport team is ready 24/7. We get them out the door we say within 30 minutes, it's usually within 20 minutes. Anytime a baby is born in our service area that needs to be transported to our NICU, watching them, they literally run down the hallway, grab the transport units, and they are out the door immediately to get these babies to Marshfield Children's so that they can get the care they need immediately, honestly. And I mentioned a little bit already about our surgical abilities. You can go on to the next slide. So I talk about the services we're providing and how amazing those services are. Our problem right now is that the space does not match the level of care that we're providing. There's no denying that the services that we're providing in our NICU are world-class. Families love the care that they're getting. We are literally saving babies' lives in central Wisconsin. But you can see from this picture, this does not look like a very calm and healing environment for a baby or a family who's going through crisis. If you want to go to the next slide. We hear from our families a lot that they feel like they're in the way. And if you know anything, I am not a mother, but if you know anything about newborn babies, the best way for them to be cared for is to have their families right there with them. We want families to feel comfortable being in the space. We want them with their babies. We know they want to be with their babies. But as you can see here, with the amount of equipment that we have, it's a tight quarters. Our staff are also trying to get in there and do their jobs. Families often feel like they don't belong in that space. They don't feel like they have the room they need to care for their baby. If you want to go on to the next slide. So just a few more pictures of our current state. Again, lots of equipment. You can see in the picture on the right, we operate in an open bay style, so multiple beds are in one space. So say there are 4 babies in one space getting care at one time. All of those babies might have different needs. They might be at different place in their journey, in their patient care journey. But because they're in one space, we can't customize that experience. So maybe one child or baby needs very, very low light, limited noise, things like that. But if the child next to them and their alarm beeps, that startles the baby who really needs that quiet environment. This is, it's a very communal space. Which certainly can have perks. Families really do like getting to know one another. They feel like they have a support system, but that bay style also creates a lot of issues. We also hear from families that there's a lot of comparison maybe happening from parents. There's this feeling of guilt if their baby's maybe not progressing as fast as other babies. If a family's able to go home and somebody else has been there longer, that's really difficult on these families. It can really affect their mental health. So the way that we have it set up right now, again, excellent care, not so excellent space. So if you want to go on to the next slide, I'm delighted to share what our new plans look like. I mentioned earlier, we currently have 24 beds. We would be increasing to 26 beds. So not a huge increase in the number of families we can serve right now, but each of those would be in private rooms. So those feelings of being in the way, hearing all of the other things going on, that would go away completely. These would be private rooms. We do have the opportunity to put multiple babies in one room if we would need to grow our capacity, or if we have a couple rooms that would be set up for twins, for example, so that the family can stay in one room. But those private rooms are something that our families have been asking for. There are sleeping accommodations in each of these private rooms. So parents could stay overnight. They could stay with their child. They could spend more time there and really be part of that journey, which is not something that we have right now. Something that we would be expanding on and adding are 2 family parent-infant rooms that helps facilitate a successful transition home. So if you've had a child who's been in the NICU for weeks, sometimes months on end, and then you're suddenly told, okay, great, you can go home to Wausau. Go home, drive 40 minutes, everything's fine. That's really stressful for these families. There's a lot still that goes into caring for your baby. There might be additional medication, there's feeding schedules, there's all these things you haven't thought about. These rooms would allow families to stay for a night or two, still have that care close by and have that extra support, but get used to what it's like taking care of often a preemie baby or a baby with special needs. And that would happen right in the NICU. The other thing, there's also community areas for families and care teams. So I mentioned the communal aspect can be a benefit because you get to know other families going through this. That is still built into the space, but just separated a little bit so that you can actually step away and spend time with other families, get to know them, get the support you need, but not in the same room where your child is recovering. We've had the ability to serve older infants, better workspaces for our care team. We hear this a lot from patients. They worry about the care team as well. This is a really stressful environment. You can experience a lot of trauma as a provider in the NICU. So having better workspaces for them, and then also respite rooms where they can step away after a difficult situation. All of that will be in our new NICU. This is not a separate building. This is a renovated space in our current hospital. So the nice thing about this is when we raise the money, we can move forward very quickly. We don't need to be worrying about pouring foundations and all of that. This is an existing space that we'll be renovating to do this great care. And what you can't see on this floor plan, we don't have the little dotted lines on this one, but this about doubles our space that we would provide in Karen, even though we're not increasing the number of beds. So just really a better environment for our families and our team. If you want to go on to the next slide, a few more pictures, renderings of what the future space would look like. One of the things I love about these renderings is you can see even in just this is just the entryway. You can see that there are windows off to the side in that waiting area. If you noticed from the old pictures, it was very dark and dingy. This is a lot brighter, lighter, just a lot better environment for families. Also a lot more private, and so kind of tucked away. Families would be able to enter the NICU, obviously, but you're not going through a patient care space to get to some of those support services. So one of the doors on here would go to a consult room, for example. So if family members are coming in and they're meeting with a provider, they don't actually have to walk through the NICU to do that. It's part of the NICU, but it's kind of a separate entrance. It's much, much better for the patient care experience. You can go on to the next slide. This is another entry, another vantage point of the entryway for that NICU. The next slide, not the final slide. This is a rendering of one of those private rooms. So again, you can see much more spacious, a lot more room for the families to be there. We've upgraded a lot of our equipment, and we will continue as we move into a new space. So there is also just less equipment around, which is incredible. And you can see even the natural light in these private rooms. Some babies, as you're going through your treatment, having natural light can be a big benefit. Others, we really need to keep it dim, keep it dark and quiet. We can customize that per child and per family with these private rooms. So this is a complete 180 from what we're doing right now. Much better for the families. Do you want to go on to the next slide? So rendering of what our nursing stations would look like. Again, better workspace for our providers. You can go on to the next slide. And this is a rendering of that family lounge that I mentioned, this family communal space. We could host support groups in this area. Parents could step away and grab a meal instead of having to be in the room all the time. So really get that break that they need as well, but stay in the NICU. They're still in that space. So they're not having to buzz in and out all the time. It's a lot easier if something goes wrong with their baby to get there quickly, things like that. So having this space, this is something families have been asking for, and we're delighted that in the new space we'll be able to provide it. So I'm going to turn the presentation over to Marie so she can share a story with all of you.
Thanks, Ricky. Can you all hear me okay? All right. So I'm Marie Stewart. I am the Communications and Grant Officer at Marshfield Clinic Health System Foundation. And I just want to thank the other two groups for sharing their projects as well. I am a very committed horse person, so I loved hearing from stable hands. So, all right, you can jump to the next slide, please. Okay, so this cutie here is Amarion. I see everyone looking at him. So Amarion and his mom, Keisha, are actually from the Wausau area. So thought it'd be great to share a story of one of our Wausau area families who really needed our NICU during a critical time in their lives. So when Keisha was pregnant with Amarion back in 2018, she was measuring a little small for her pregnancy, didn't think too much of it, but when she went in for a routine checkup, the doctor told her that Amarion was severely growth restricted. So they actually ended up referring her to Marshfield Medical Center in Marshfield, and she stayed there on bed rest until she had Amarion. And because our birth center is connected to our NICU, we were able to help Amarian out right away because he was actually born at just 26 weeks and just weighed about a pound. So he only had about a 5% chance of survival at that point, which is pretty scary for the family. And he actually spent the first 7 months of his life in our NICU. He was on a vent a lot of that time, but because of the great specialty care that's provided, he did survive. And actually he ended up spending a total of a little over 400 days at Marshfield Children's Hospital between his time in the NICU, and then he was actually in our pediatric intensive care unit after the NICU. But he was finally able to go home. And to our knowledge, he's still doing well today. So just a great story of one of the families that we were able to help. So you can go to the next slide. So Amarian and Keisha are just one example of those families. And this slide is really to show you the families that come to Marshfield Children's Hospital and get care at our NICU. You might be thinking, well, this project is in Marshfield. What does this have to do with the Wausau community? As you can see, actually 17% of our infants who receive care at the NICU are from the Wausau area, and only 9% are from the Marshfield area. So we really serve that broader central and northern Wisconsin communities. So you can see here too, 105 patients actually required that specialty transport service in 2022. So you can just see that we had that, a lot of infants use that. And that last statistic there is 31% of families in the Wausau and Weston area have used Marshfield Clinic Health System for their babies. So that's a market share percentage. And that means that 8% of those families had their babies cared for at Marshfield Children's Hospital, and then 21% at Marshfield Medical Center Weston. I just want to point out here that our NICU, and this might be a repeat from Ricky, but it bears mentioning again, but our NICU is the only one in the area that is connected to a designated children's hospital. So that's a big differentiator and allows us to provide those specialty services at an elevated level. And we are also a Children's Miracle Network hospital. So with that, again, we can provide like child life, music therapy, a lot of those different special services for infants and their families. All right, you can go to the next slide. Oh, there you go. So we are fundraising through a capital campaign for the new NICU. It is a $20 million capital campaign. And currently we are pursuing lead gifts for the campaign. We have 2.7 million already committed, which is great. And we have 20 million in asks pending. So we are doing really well. Actually, we had a $500,000 gift to the campaign from the Green Heck Foundation in Wausau. So that was a great boost and just shows the Wausau community's commitment to this as well. We have full support from the Marshfield Clinic Health System and Essentia leadership. I'm sure probably most of the people on this call are aware of the pending merger with Essentia Health System out of Duluth. So we continue to progress with that merger, but Essentia does not have a designated children's hospital or NICU of this level. So this project is something that they definitely want to see come to fruition. Our boards, the health system board, clinic board, Essentia's boards, our foundation board, all the boards are on board with the project. And then our capital campaign committee. And so that consists of community members and leaders from the different regions that we serve, and all are committed to seeing this go through. Our plans are to begin construction in 2024 and the facility completed by 2025. So we are currently on track for that. And again, this project really will only be possible with philanthropic support. So you can go to the final slide. All right. So we just want to thank you for your attention and time and support today on behalf of our littlest patients. You know, that really means the world. So We can open it up for questions, and then you can see there if you have any follow-ups or would like more information on the capital campaign, you can reach out to Ricky, who spoke before me. So, any questions?
Great presentation. Thank you.
Of course.
Because there aren't questions doesn't mean there won't be more later once other people see the presentation. I'm sure all three of you will be asked additional questions as people look at this. So, so thank you very much. And let's see, we give another minute here. Anybody else have a question? Jean, do you have one you want to pop out there? Okay, great. Well, thank you for your presentations today. Thank you for your time. These recordings are going to be shared with some of our donors, and of course be available to you if you'd like copies of them. So I want to point out that the next donors forum is going to be on December 7th. It will be here in our office, and we're going to be talking to the Wausau School District Mental Health Initiative. And that's going to include presenters from the Wausau School District, Connexus Credit Union, WEA Member Benefits Foundation, and that invitation will go out next week. And we're looking for registration since we'll be in person, and there'll be a lunch available. So just so everybody knows that that's our next one. And these are three great projects, and we'll evangelize them for you. Thank you for taking the time and putting together really polished and informative presentations for us. So everybody have a great day, and we'll see you next time.